Hi everyone. All right, so this is your review video for ecology. It's going to be for your first part of ecology. This is going to be about biological levels of organization, and it's going to be about different kinds of biomes and the animals that live in those biomes. So let's start with levels of organization. At the bottom, we have an organism. That's just one living thing. It could be any animal or plant, because plant's a living thing, right? So it could be any of those things, as long as you have one kind. Now, if you have more than one kind, we have what's called a population. A population is a group of same organisms, a group of similar organisms. You can have a group of herd of elephants here, you can have some tigers, you can have bisons, you can have these daffodils. As long as it's the same animal or plant, and we have more than one, we have a population. Now, if we have different animals living together, or different plants and animals, we have what's called a community. A community is different populations living together. So yes, you can see in this picture here, we've got bison and we've got snakes and some birds, but there's an even better picture here. This is a great example of a community. We've got different plants like these trees, we've got different animals like these antelope and this elephant and these zebras, all of them together around this watering hole. Now, a community is only taking into account living things, the living members, all the different populations. If we're talking about living and non-living, we're going to be talking about an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a community with its non-living surroundings. That means anything not living that's contributing to the community somehow. This could be water, this could be important soils for the plants. This could be the geology, it could be the weather, it could even be the different kinds of gases, especially if we have water environments, right? It's important. The kind of gases we have in the water is important. So here's a great example of an ecosystem. We have non-living parts and living parts together. Community with its non-living parts. So we've got population of turtle here, population of frogs, population of fish, population of grasses and ferns, all those working together with water, with the temperature, which is a non-living factor, and with the general temperature and the soil. So, ecosystem, living parts, non-living parts. Now, if we're talking about a collection of ecosystems, we are talking about a biome. A biome is a combination of different ecosystems. Excuse me. Ooh, okay, sorry. Different ecosystems working, all being together. So an ecosystem can be pretty small, right? An ecosystem can be as big as this pond or a lake or a tree. Biome is a collection of all these different ecosystems. So, for example, a desert biome or a forest biome. Now that we're talking about biomes, we can see the Earth, our biosphere, is made up of all these different biomes. And we need to know, not all of these specifically, we need to know the ones I'm about to go over. So, the biomes you need to know are as follows. The tropical rainforest, you need to know the savanna, you need to know the desert, you need to know the tundra, you need to know forests, that includes deciduous and coniferous, and you also need to know the oceans. Alright, so before we start going over those biomes, let's go over two important definitions. Habitats and biomes. A habitat is a place where a specific plant or animal lives. It's not going to be large scale. A habitat is more focused on where one animal or plant is living and its surroundings. A biome is more a large-scale ecosystem, and a biome is really decided upon on its non-living things, on its non-living characteristics. So things like climate, elevation, soil, anything that's non-living, that's what's going to decide what a biome is like. It's not that the animals and plants decide what a biome is like. It's really the non-living parts that decide what a biome is going to be like. So let's start with one that almost everyone knows, the tropical rainforest. Sorry, my cats are running around like crazy. The tropical rainforest is found near the equator. And remember, the equator is the middle of the earth. It's the line that goes all the way around. Tropical rainforests are normally always hot, they're humid, and there's little change in temperature. Um, because of the steady temperature, because it never changes, and because there's a lot of water here, we have a high biodiversity. That means we have a lot of different plants and a lot of different animals that live in this kind of biome. Normally, these animals are what are called specialists. That means they live in a very specific place and rely on a specific kind of food. Some of them only live in a certain zone of a tree. So they are very specialized for a rainforest and have trouble living anywhere else. We also have symbiotic relationships. Those are relationships that animals have with each other where they help one another. And another common thing you're going to see in the rainforest is camouflage. Camouflage is super common. It helps animals hide, it helps them survive, and it also helps some animals hunt other animals. Camouflage is very common in the tropical rainforest. Um, After the rainforest here, we've got the savanna. Now we can find the savanna in Central Africa, Central South America, and Northern Australia. And it is hot and dry like a desert is, but we do have a little vegetation here. We have plants, more plants than just cactuses, right? We've got grasses and even a few trees. Now the reasons why we have plants here is because we have two seasons, not just hot all the time like a desert. A savanna has two seasons, dry and rainy. During the dry season, a lot of plants tend to die off. We don't have a lot of water, and a lot of animals tend to migrate during the dry season. During the rainy season, plants grow very fast, and animals start reproducing. Plants start producing fruits. The whole savanna comes alive when the rain comes. Everything is taking advantage of this water that shows up. And because of that, animals tend to reproduce in the rainy season. They have more resources. They have water. They have more food. It's safer for their babies, right? Their babies will have access to water and food. During the dry season, because there's limited amount of food and water, animals tend to migrate. That means they tend to be moving around. They don't stay in the same place. All right, after the savanna, let's talk about the next biome, a desert. So, like a savanna, it is very hot, but there's no wet season here. There's no rain season in the desert. It very rarely rains. We have less than 20 centimeters of rain a year in a desert. Now, we can find deserts in various places. We can find it in North America. We can find it in South America and Africa. We can find them all over the world. In a desert, we don't have a lot of nutritious soils because we don't have a lot of water. So the soil kind of lacks nutrients for plants. That's why we don't have a lot of those. And it's incredibly dry. There's no water in the air either. Now, because there's no water, the animals have to adapt to that. Like most animals, some of these animals can get some water from food. Animals also have a thick outer skin, which helps them, right? A lot of these animals don't sweat. Sweating is going to make you lose water. And in the desert, you cannot lose water. So most of these animals have a thick skin and they won't sweat. They also dig underground to avoid the sun. And for the most part, we have smaller animals in the desert. They also have bigger ears. These bigger ears let them give off heat. It's a way of cooling off. And let's go the opposite here. Tundra can be considered a type of desert because it's pretty dry. But tundra is different for a few reasons. Tundra, for the most part, is a lot colder. It's usually no higher than 10 degrees Celsius. Another reason why the tundra is a little different from the desert is because the top layer of soil it has is permanently frozen. We call that the permafrost layer. Permafrost is when we have the top part of dirt completely frozen, and that stays like that year round. The tundra surrounds the North and South Pole, and it includes some of the Arctic and polar environments. Now, these animals that live in this kind of environment are all about trying to keep their heat in. They need to keep their heat. So they have small ears. Small ears will keep in heat. Ears is one of the quickest ways to lose heat, right? So when you're cold, especially here in the winter, you want to get a hat that covers up your ears. Another way these animals keep warm is through insulation. That means they have thick coats of fur, like I have my sweater here, and they have big layers of fat to keep them nice and warm. All right, what do we see? We have a few more here. Next up, we have forests. All right, so a forest biome, we know there's a few different forest biomes. We've already talked about a rainforest biome. There's also a deciduous and coniferous biomes. A deciduous biome, or deciduous forest biome, is usually mild, meaning it gets cold, it also gets hot. This kind of forest has both kinds of weather. And there's a lot of rain. So, right now at EF, where you guys are, if you look outside the window, you will see a deciduous forest. A deciduous forest will lose its trees. Not lose its trees, it'll lose its leaves. The trees of a deciduous forest will lose its leaves. And if you look outside right now, most of our trees have lost their leaves. That's because a deciduous forest loses its leaves for the winter, and then gets it back in the spring. Now, a coniferous forest, on the other hand, is also called an evergreen forest. These trees never lose their leaves. They're always green. So we have a picture down here of a coniferous tree. This is an evergreen tree. And these kind of trees never lose their leaves. They always stay. Up here we have a deciduous forest. You can see that leaves are starting to turn different colors. That means they're getting ready to fall off. Animals in a forest environment, especially with the deciduous and coniferous biomes, they're adapted for cold weather. That means they hibernate, they have thick winter coats that they grow out, and they can get food from all parts of the forest. All right, final two slides, final biome. The ocean. Ocean covers 3/4 of the planet. It is mostly a saltwater environment, and the ocean can be separated into different layers. These layers are created by different amounts of light that filter down. So the further you go down, the more dark it's going to become, because less light is going to get down there. All right, let's see if I can do this final slide before I lose my voice. All right, ocean animals. These kind of animals are adapted to living in the water. They have a variety of ways of breathing. They can breathe through gills. They can breathe through lungs, like what we have, or like what whales have. Being in the water also allows for a large variation of sizes, and these animals have adjusted to living with different amounts of sun. If they live near the top of the ocean, they're going to get more sun. If they live further down, they are going to get a little less sun. But the size variation is what's so cool about ocean animals. Animals here can get huge because the water allows for the animals to get that big. It allows for that kind of weight. And you can see, looking at this size, elephants are huge, but compared to whales, they're pretty tiny. It's because water allows for these bigger animals. All right, I'm starting to lose my voice. That means this video is coming to an end. You guys have a good night, and good luck studying.